Hi folks, and welcome to shIft. I'm Jeff Johnson. This video is part of a special series that I've been working on to encourage conversation about life's changes. From those we all share to those some of us will never fully understand. Recently, the Tofino Arts Council put out a call for artistic projects with the theme of My First Pandemic. With the COVID pandemic being one of very few events that nearly everyone on Earth will have experienced in some sense or another, I jumped at the chance to be a part of it. So joining me in conversation in this video are two of the artists who contributed to the Tofino Arts Council's My First Pandemic project. Miles lives in Tofino and works in hospitality. He produced a song and accompanying video entitled Isolation Nation. We'll put the link in the description below. Erin also lives in Tofino and works as a counselor. Her unique knitted piece covers concepts like isolation and opportunity. Finally, Alex is a collaborator and friend who lives in the Fraser Valley, working in the film industry, as well as a number of group home and care environments. While she wasn't part of the Tofino Arts Council program before this video, she has also used her art and creativity to navigate her first pandemic. The conversation was recorded on April 1st, 2021, and sheds light on the personal experiences and insight of 4 people through the COVID pandemic at that point. It is intended to encourage others to have frank and honest conversations of their experience in order to better understand and cope with the impact the event has had on themselves and others. All of us panelists acknowledge that our pandemic experiences were difficult, but others have faced profound and existential challenges that we can never understand. We absolutely do not intend to in any way diminish the legitimacy of anyone's experience while exploring our own. A big thank you to the Tofino Arts Council for helping, it be possible for me to take so much time to edit such a long video. And for those of you used to my usual output of Vancouver Island sunsets and wildlife, this might be a bit of a departure. So thanks for tuning in. This is shIft, My First Pandemic. For the My First Pandemic project, artists and creative people in the community were asked to propose projects that reflect their experience in their first pandemic. So what did you decide to do, and what made you decide that that was the thing to do?
Oh, well, I learned how to make pizza. Definitely learned how to make pizza. Anybody else pizza? No. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. Pizza is delicious. You gotta learn how to make it, and I did a lot of that. For the video, I had literally just lost my job. I was like, hey, why not? And I sent an application in the form of a comic book. I created this cartoon band called the Animals of Tofino. You may have seen them around. They've been here and there, won a couple of awards, been in a couple of film festivals. They're awesome. Look up the Animals. Everybody. Animals of Tofino, Miles Beebe. I've been having such a blast making these videos since I've moved to Tofino that I was like, hey, this is something that I can do. I've never really, I do have an arts background. I never really went a lot of places with it, but just kind of, this was kind of my opportunity to say, okay, I'm gonna reach out. I'm gonna try and get a grant. It's the first time I ever tried to get a grant in my entire life, and I was like approved. Boom! And for the 3 weeks that I was unemployed, I worked on that video and popped it out and really made it fast and just had a blast doing it. You know, working kind of like a 9-to-5 job, 40 hours a your week is going kind of into doing something else. And like my passion is to do animation and to do creative projects, but to really be able to like get up in the morning and start working on it, and then chill out, have a tea, get back to it, and really focus on it and give all the energy you want was just a great experience. I'm talking more practically about it, but
well, practically is important. Like you mentioned that idea of having that time. There's not a lot of times after you're a teenager when someone just says, here's a summer vacation, basically. The medium, these Animals of Tofino, they've been something you've been working on for a while, pre-COVID?
I've done about 4 or 5 of the videos. I've only released 3 of them, but like I've always kind of just in little pieces here and little pieces there. The next one is going to be blow your mind. It's going to take a long time to finish my vision, but like it's going to blow your mind, promise. It's going to blow your mind. So basically the thing is the Animals of Tofino had always been stuck in Tofino, and in this adventure they go into outer space, right? Because probably the best way to, I'm not an infectious disease specialist, but I figured that going into space to fight COVID was a good idea. And they were very successful because they had the right laser beams, chopped it down, stopped it from like pretty much spreading all over the earth.
Yeah.
So that was very exciting to kind of take them out of Tofino into a kind of a new place.
So Aaron, let's hear a little bit about the piece you prepared. You said you're not historically an artist per se, but again, it sounds like this created an opportunity for you to flex those muscles a bit.
Yeah, definitely. It gave me something to work towards, but without being really commercial and being constrained, to create something for somebody else to use and appreciate. It was my vision. So that was a nice opportunity. I came across the proposal and I mulled it over for a bit. And I just remember I almost went into this hypomanic episode and I stayed up really late writing out my application and thinking about it, what I wanted to do. And I drew a terrible sketch of the design that I wanted to create. It's so seductive when you feel like really inspired to do something. And that was one of those times. And maybe a couple weeks later, I got an email back saying that my proposal was accepted and just they gave me the green light. And yeah, I was so excited. I was jumping up and down and screaming. My family was worried. Yeah, but I guess with a lot of people that, fiber artists, people that knit, we're the type of people that already like to stay at home and be alone doing things quietly. And knitting takes forever. So we're like, what? We all have to stay at home and not go out and socialize? Okay.
Yeah.
So there is like little words like quarantine cast on and things like that going around. I think it just gave people permission. Even when I say it out loud, I'm a little self-conscious, like, oh, knitting. These people are real artists. What are they going to think of me and my granny skills? But maybe that instead of staying at home playing video games or staying at home and just not being able to adjust very easily, people who are, knit and crochet and do other needlework and fiber arts are like, I already know how I'm going to use my time and love it.
I think anything that you can physically create and your mind can kind of leave and transcend, and you get to come out with this beautiful piece that you're proud of is art. I think if it's on paper, if it's on a canvas, or it's something even better if it's something you could wear. I mean, we're feeling the apocalypse. We're feeling it.
There is a psychological comfort actually in a skill that produces something that reflects a basic need as well in a time when things aren't quite as certain as they were. Do you feel that in your knitting? Is there any sort of, like you said, cooking, Miles mentioned learning to cook, kind of a same sort of thing?
Well, something I always thought about knitting was that it's typically considered a women's craft. And, having little kids at home who can't go to daycare and school anymore, trying to entertain and educate 2 young children and get your own work done. And I just was thinking about knitting and thinking about women's work and thinking about how maybe this craft and this artistry developed out of a women's need for, intellectual and creative expression that fit into the constraints of home life. And they were only permitted to do things like this because it brought some income or created something that filled a practical need.
I really enjoyed the photos of the knitting over the head, and they were alarming. I don't want to say what you had intended, but I'll tell you what I felt when I saw them. Okay, like it was a sense of kind of closing yourself off to the rest of the world and feeling safe. It's odd to see the face, and becoming more and more covered as it's going, right? So it's interesting to also see it in that kind of series. It definitely made me look twice. So I liked that it evoked that strong emotion. And it wasn't at first, my first impression was also a kind of almost an isolated thing because your face was like covered and it was just like that. But then all of a sudden I felt, no, that feels warm. That feels nice.
I really like that you went into it like that. That's a really cool way to describe your experience. And I I appreciate hearing it. It was really personal, and it was one of those things, this idea that was really stuck in my mind. And it was like, I need to see this out of my head and figure out how it's going to affect me and affect other people, and see how it goes. And I liked it. I didn't have to edit any like my 11s out of my eyebrows or anything like that. Didn't have to worry about my makeup. I did want to make a turtleneck to mask my face. That was the idea. And I was like, I don't know how this is going to come off. I really hate doing the neckline. It's really boring. So I was like, this sucks. There's like a lot of metaphor in the work, you know, like the main motif is masks, you know, and wearing a mask is the conceptual metaphor. But at the beginning of the pandemic, like a year ago, the first month or so, I was so anxious. I would find myself not being able to breathe. And I'd just be like sitting in the morning, having my coffee, listening to the news. And all of a sudden, why am I like, I'm so tight in the chest, I can't breathe. And, you know, if I focused on, like, I realized, I was like, what the hell am I going to do if my kids don't go back to school? What if I'm going to have to quit my job? I'm going to go crazy. I started to have all, like, you know, spiraling. One of the things that I support people to do when they're experiencing anxiety is to refocus on the present moment. And so with the fabric over my face, I could just barely see. You know, the stitches were pulled tight enough that there were spaces, and I could see a little bit ahead of me. Like I could see the button on my phone, and I could set up my my workbench and my clamps to get the phone to take the picture, and I could even do a couple of stitches. And it was a metaphor. It was like, only look as far ahead as you need to do the next steps. And just reminding myself at the same time, today was okay. My kid learned some math. My other kid thought it was great because everybody was home, and I'm fine. And that we'll just see what happens tomorrow.
We didn't actually share it with the other two, but you did have a couple of kind of creative COVID-themed adventures over the last little while. Do you want to tell us a bit about them?
I probably haven't like painted like actively in about 15 years, where I've sat down and painted. And I popped out of like 10 or 12 bird paintings, and I called it COVID's for the birds. And in all my bird paintings, it's all COVID related. I started off with a pretty peacock with nowhere to go, like dressed up for a party and nowhere to go. And bald vulture wearing a boa, essentially drinking a martini, smoking a cigarette, because this is what we do. This one was the one I did of myself, because, you know, ostriches are notoriously known to keep their head in the sand, and just when they're afraid, and it's like, and the headphones is like, I want to go back to work now, guys, let's do this. And then I have one up here. This is when Dr. Bonnie Henry told us we could open up our bubbles. And I hope it doesn't pop in our face, like blow up in our faces. So I got the birds blowing bubble gum, and, you know, it became kind of silly and comical. And yeah, I just enjoyed it, and it kept me sane. It kept me totally sane. And I gave away most of my pieces, and this guy inspired an artwork that I did and gave away to all my family at Christmas time. And I made hoodies, and it was like a COVID Christmas, and it had an ostrich on it wearing a mask wrapped in Christmas lights. And, you know, it had like all your favorite Christmas quotes from different movies on the sweater. My families could post photos. And
it was
even
like
though
you were
we're
there
together, we were all together. Even though I work in an artistic job, I don't do anything artistic in my job. I got into the industry because I have a passion for it, but I don't actually do anything passionate. And so COVID has allowed me to do that.
The advantage of having that time, to me, was spoiled slightly by the fact that there's so much anxiety attached to the world kind of feeling.
Did you have to shape your thoughts into that appreciating the time?
Yeah, absolutely. And people with me were anxious too, right? I was pretending to be more brave than I actually was, to the people that I would see on a daily basis. But yeah, of course, it was great to have an opportunity to be close to people and to make 1,000 pizzas. But like, yeah,
Tell us about these pizzas. What's the what you really want to
Do you
tell
really
us
want me to
about
answer
the
that
pizza?
question?
Well, yeah. I mean, I was a musician, or I am a musician. I actually almost don't feel like a musician anymore, because every day before this thing, I had a guitar in my hand. I was maybe not writing songs, but I was learning songs. I was playing songs. I was doing something that you would think a musician does. And after about the first month of this, I put my guitar down, and I haven't played my guitar in the last year as much as I would have played it in a week beforehand, because I think it was something about wanting to separate myself from the expectations that I had from the pre-COVID life to what I should actually be thinking about now. You know, there was something about dwelling on, I was a musician and I'm not going to have a gig for a long time. And it might have just been a business survival thing. I started finding creative outlets that I thought might actually have a market in this time. I started working on a book that I've had rattling around in my head for like 10 years. I was not a video making guy until 6 months ago. And I basically repurposed almost all of my musical equipment into a video empire now. So that I don't know if your pizza experience is like that. I would like to know if that's
okay,
part of it.
Sure. So I'm a terrible cook. Absolutely a terrible cook. I've not, from lack of trying, I do many creative things very well, but baking, cooking, not one of them. Making videos and paintings, stuff I've been doing for decades, right? Pizza, no, and I love pizza, right? So we made every kind of dough, every kind of recipe, like with the, take it like 3-day recipe doughs, like, you know, bucket bread that you'd be ready like in an hour and a half, the instant stuff you buy, the sobo dough. Love the sobo dough. Love the sobo dough, but it's very labor intensive. So just all these things. So through all of this experience, I came and I perfected my own personal take on the pizza dough. Learned the pizza sauce too. San Marzano tomatoes, everybody knows, right? I didn't know that. I didn't know that, but did everybody know that?
No.
I didn't know that. I don't know.
Oh, okay. San Marzano tomatoes, okay? Little valley in Italy, the sun hits them all day long. That's why they're
Those are
amazing.
the tomatoes.
We'll put a link on the bottom in the
Yeah,
comments.
put the link, San Marzano. Great. When you can travel again, you got to go there. Don't put this in the video. Once a week, we watch 90 Day Fiancé, and I make pizza for the crew, and it's getting there, man.
Pizza, 90 Day Fiance.
Yeah.
That
a party.
That sounds like a COVID tradition that might survive.
Well, it is, and it has. You know, we have a very small bubble, but those people are appreciative for the pizza. You know, and that was a skill that I did not have. And had there not been a pandemic, and I take a lot of pride in it. It's, you know, it makes me happy. It makes me proud. And when I see the people eat it, and they're like, oh yeah, man.
All of our routines got really disturbed by the thing. My music work went from 5 nights a week to 5 gigs in a year. Have you found other routines to replace the ones you used to have? If tomorrow everything about the pandemic was gone, what have you learned about your day-to-day that you might want to carry on as a lesson?
Not only did I get removed from my work, which also brought me back home full time, because I would live out of town through the week for work and then come back to Chilliwack. But I'm an island girl at heart, from the island. And on top of that, I had my entire family with me 24/7, where now I'm a teacher. And I've worked in the school district for years prior to film, but now I'm a 24-hour teacher with a kid, and that blew my mind. And I was like, I'm not even getting paid. I didn't go to school for this. What am I doing? So, and because I have the need to have everything kind of in front of me, nice and neat, school was just like a school day when I was teaching my daughter. It was Monday to Friday, get up, get your bed made. We all get dressed. We all have to move on. Like, we all have to get up and continue, because otherwise I will be sitting there and spiraling while she has lunch and is watching something. Like, during her break, I'm trying to fit in a 30-minute workout because I'm just fighting so hard for routine, because if I don't have a routine, I don't know who I am. And that was killing me. And then at nighttime, it was like, check, we survived. We did it, guys. And then I could come down to my art room and I would create because my brain was free. I kept everything in order because otherwise, I don't know. I found out I'm crazy in COVID.
The things we couldn't control became so out of our control. Was it like, I control what I can? Like, did you have a kind of complete psychotic, like, I must have possession of something? Was that?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think it was, I felt so lost in losing my job and losing potentially part of my identity and losing. I was in Mexico and we had to come back. You know, I had to fight really hard to get that time off work to go, because in my industry, it's really hard to get time off because there's always another project and there's always another something to work on. So I had to make time for myself, and it felt fantastic, but then it suddenly got taken from me. And then all you want to do is, like you said, control the things that you can control at that first little bit.
Part of the other thing that I wanted to do or wanted to talk about was other people's experiences that obviously were different than mine. In my case, it's me and my wife, and we already spent an ungodly amount of time together. We were in the band together. I've heard people say they met their kids for the first time this year because they were, you know, really working people. Any insights, I guess, gleaned from that extra time with the kids?
I've learned to play. Like, I've learned to, like, literally just play like I'm a kid, because I have a single child and it's really tricky to entertain a single child, and you want to meet them on their level. And I've played Lego and built things, but I always want to make things into a competition, or I always want to make things into a learning practice. But I've kind of learned to just throw that out the window and just play. It's been weird because I'm 38 years old holding Barbie dolls, being like chatty.
My fiance is a photographer, and she is a world photographer where she shoots in different countries all the time. One of her main businesses is in Montreal, because we're from Montreal. So, you know, every year she's flying back and forth 15, 20 times, or going to a different country. We've been together for 10 years. So I popped the question during COVID. During those 10 years, we haven't had the opportunity to spend time together because she's been traveling half the time. So we have been forced into an everyday routine where we're going to see each other every day, and we're going to have breakfast together, and we're going to share stories every day. It's been great.
Yeah, it's been all right. You didn't drive each other off?
No, we didn't. We butt heads and we drew lines, and we, had our issues. Not having that time apart, having been used to it for 10 years, it definitely changed the dynamic, but we're closer. We ended up being closer than ever. And like knowing that I had a partner that was that strong and there for me during those uncertain times really kept me grounded and kept me together. So we really, like I said, I proposed. We've been together for 10 years, and now like I'm looking forward to getting married. You know what I mean? Like it's absolutely changed our relationship for the better. Obviously, it also crushes me because now, you know, we're kind of in the tail end of this, and I have to prepare for her to go back to that. So anyway.
I connect with Alex's comments on needing control. When schools first closed, I was like, oh crap, I have to put together a homeschooling schedule and make sure the older one hits all of those, you know, milestones that she's supposed to reach in kindergarten. And I let that go pretty quickly. She doesn't listen. She doesn't listen. I just tried to encourage her to do her math once in a while, playing math games with her brother and keeping up with independent reading and reading with her, or reading with myself and her dad and reading to her brother. And she did fine. And it affirmed a lot of what I already believed about children, is that as long as you're there with them, you know, like Alex noticed, just play with them and let them lead. You know, you're playing Barbies. I'm sure that was her choice, not your idea of like a favorite activity, but just giving them your engagement without any conditions is very hard to do, but the idea is very simple, and I think it's really supportive of growth. And it was freeing to not have to rush so-and-so off to here and so-and-so off to there and get in line at like the crack of 8 a.m. to register for, recreational opportunities because there weren't any. And then there was no playground for a while. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do all winter with these guys? I just let them go off and do their thing and try not to let them kill themselves or each other. And they're just remarkable in their ability to be like, hey, look at this log. It's our new playground. I don't know if it's who they were already, but they have definitely become great buddies. I feel really fortunate that my husband and I both kept on working through the pandemic. So we were free of a lot of the concerns that many, many, many people had. So the biggest concern was the well-being of our children, especially the school-aged one. And I think she really did suffer the most out of all of us, not having any contact with her friends and not having contact with her teacher. So yeah, personally and family-wise, there was a lot of positives, but I think my daughter really suffered.
How was the process of explaining it to children? I don't have kids, and I do my absolute damnedest to avoid them at every given opportunity, but I'm fascinated by their resiliency. I can't imagine taking a 7-year-old or whatever and saying for the next, even at the beginning, couple of weeks, you can only see your friends through the iPad.
We have a blended family, so we share our daughter back and forth. And at her other household, she has a baby brother. So at least that gave her something over there to explain to her, an only child, that I'm now your friend, or just this is what you get. and the only way you're going to interact is through the monitor. It's sad. It's so sad to watch. This is how your kid's playing and interacting, engaging with your friends, and how the magic isn't there. Like there's no chemistry. There's no the realism is gone. Like the connection is gone. But to explain to her that this is what we're going to have to do from now on, that was, something that she could really kind of relate to already, because this is something she enjoyed doing before COVID, because now all the games that she likes to play online, you can interact with your friends. We totally gave her more screen time than you should. But honestly, like, Mama needs a glass of wine at 3 p.m. It was tough, guys. It was tough. It became more for her a little bit of a reward system, in the sense where I could spend more time on my screen. And we had to break down, like, this much time is allotted to play time on the screens, this much time is allotted to education, and this much time is allotted to just, chatting with your friends. So you had to use the same device for multiple different things.
Are those hard borders to enforce? Because I sit down to do a project, and while my editing thing is launching, I'm already opening Facebook. I can't maintain those borders for myself.
There's 2 of us in this household, and there's another house, so you have to kind of find another, like, a common ground. But I'm like, you're too young. What are you doing on a computer? Play with the toys and make instruments and make art. Just do whatever. But like, why are you engaging in this box? So, but thankfully, she already had some good fundamentals and in how to use the tech, like the tools we have now to engage with people. So it wasn't a huge issue. The only thing is when she'd get very sad and be like, I miss my friends. I miss going to the park. I miss this. And so, yeah.
How did either of you explain to your kids the actual reason for it? That this is what's going to happen, but I'm sure, well, why?
Our house, we were watching a lot of Fox News, and which was probably not the best idea. So she blames Donald Trump for the entire thing.
Okay. Why?
I don't know.
So stressful. So stressful to watch that. Oh my God! Don't do that to your brain. Oh, I'm sorry.
It was a lot last year too, because a lot of things came out in media, like, Black Lives Matter, and that was in the background on top of what was going on with COVID, and there was always something, and we were always looking for more information. And we were watching all the news was on 24/7 in our house. And I've never watched news until COVID. And now I just can't stop watching news.
I think that was part of the control, right? We lost control, but we can control how much information we're taking in about whatever's going on. I know I had that anxiety. I'd get up in the morning, get on the phone, and it wasn't on the phone to Facebook or whatever, it was on the phone to, news, just to get a number that was higher, slightly higher than the number was yesterday about whatever. But I still knew I couldn't do anything about it. And I could make some informed long-term decisions based on trends I was seeing, but it was kind of fascinating to just get into that news addiction sort of thing. Erin, any thoughts on explaining the situation to your kids?
I had a lot of questions about dying from my daughter. She's 6. She's almost 7 now. A lot of, am I going to die? Are you going to die? And I just say, yeah. We're all going to die at some point. That's what happens. If you live, then you die. But if you take good care of your body and get a good sleep and eat well and have a good life, then you may feel ready to say, I've had a good life and I'm done now, and somebody else can take my place. And it's not the first time we've had conversations about dying. We're just that kind of people. We don't hide it, but we explain it in a developmentally appropriate way. My son, he doesn't care. He's like, this is so great. Mommy's home. I love it.
Kind of from the beginning, my concerns weren't for myself so much as my parents, and just trying to come to terms with the idea that what the balance was interacting with them, because I knew that them interacting with me was a risk. There was like this terror that hugging my mom could be the thing that killed her. One of the most comforting things that a person can do, to have that intermingled with the idea that you could be killing your own mother, was just like,
by loving her.
Yeah, and there was actually a moment when we visited my parents, just kind of right at the beginning of the whole thing. We were outside, we were doing all the stuff, and then at the end I was like, okay, I'm going into the bathroom, I'm washing my face and hands and brushing my teeth, getting as clean as I possibly can. Mom, you go do the same so I can give you a big hug before we go.
I guess 2 months ago, my partner Chelsea was going to go and visit her dad, and I pleaded with her not to go. The day she was supposed to hop on the flight to Vancouver, he was diagnosed with COVID. He was hospitalized for a week before they put him on the ventilator. And then he spent 2 weeks on the ventilator. And we were told that he had a 2 out of 3 chance of surviving. So we had that looming over us. If you want to talk about going to dark places and time kind of all stopping right there, every day was like and we're so far away, and not that we could even go and visit if we were there, right? So we've been really lucky here on the island, in terms of most of the people I know have been affected. My family back in Montreal and my friends back in Montreal have not been as lucky. So it's so has touched the family dynamic. And of course I want to go. I haven't hugged my mom in over a year. You know what I mean? I haven't seen any of my relatives in over a year. I haven't left the island in over a year, So it's crazy the way that it's just kind of like distance us from everything, from the things that we know, and our families.
My mother-in-law is quite elderly, and we have my in-laws, actually both sides of us, we have a very large extended family, but we live all over North America and the world. So I feel impacted by not being able to see my parents. My grandmother died, and it was hard to witness my dad's experience of it over the phone, and not be there to support him in person. And my parents moved, and that was like, really stressful for them, and I was unable to be there for them. It's really hard for me to try and get my kids on FaceTime with them, and they're just too little to engage properly and have a conversation. And then my parents just have the camera pointed at their foreheads. And I feel like they have missed so much because they haven't seen my children in over a year. And my son is so little. He was like a toddler, and now he's a little boy. And it's this big change, and all these funny moments that my parents missed. And then my mother-in-law is on the island and needing a little bit more support. She's older than my parents, And we made some tough decisions, kind of like, is this an ethical thing to do? We took the kids down to Victoria a couple of times and took them to see their Nana. We didn't go in her home, but we went out for a walk to go feed some ducks and turtles nearby. And we were weighing the risks and the benefits of that visit. Like, what if she doesn't see her grandchildren? She can make the decision for herself whether she feels it's worth the risk, because there is like a huge benefit to being connected to loved ones, and just, for that intergenerational connection. It's important to us, and I think it does a lot, especially for the youngest and the oldest.
Yeah.
Going back to kind of talking about being stuck with the person you're with at home, I've had a real us versus them thing. My wife and I have really kind of polarized into this little neutron star of dense support for one another, to the almost willingness to annihilate the rest of humanity in order to support one another and to be stable in our own little thing. Like, it has created the little bit of psychological insight into the like post-apocalyptic cannibal tribe thing.
Yeah. I get it.
So many people that at least were acquaintances, I'm going to have a real hard time seeing again and forgiving, because of what I view as socially irresponsible behavior or attitudes that have gone down during this. I've seen people that are saying things basically that to me sound like they're basically saying they're happy to go out and commit mass murder, which I kind of just said I was willing to, but I at least get why that's bad. One guy specifically said, if I go traveling during this and someone gets sick because I gave it to them and they die 2 weeks later, I'm not even going to know, so who cares?
I definitely wanted to create the backdoor relationship with like another couple, like that, the secret gathering.
The secret bubble?
Yeah, the secret bubble. I wanted to create that. So I had one with an only child as well. So I could have some interaction for my daughter and just a friend. And I was, picking people. And then as I dive into their lives, I'm like, they're open to secret bubbles all across. So you have like 18 secret bubbles. I'm like, that's not a secret. And then watching my friends and watching family members do things that I'm like, what are you doing? And if you're doing it, why are you posting these pictures? Mm-hmm. Why are you guys all hanging out? I haven't seen my dad in a year. Why is it okay at this family that you guys are all sitting together? When I'm seeing people inside people's houses, or I'm seeing people like hanging out together, partying together, I'm like, I'm trying not to judge, but it's really hard not to judge when you're trying to follow the rules.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing, right? I guess there's many people being way more interested in what their rights are and not that concerned about the social responsibilities of it.
It's amazing when you think about it, though. Like, and I don't mean to oversimplify the problem, but all everybody had to do was just stay in your house for 3 weeks in a row, and they could have eradicated this thing in the early days, right? Had we been able to just do the basic thing, but we're so selfish as humans that we need to go out there and spread it around and not isolate. And like 3 weeks, that's all it would have taken, right? If everybody just, I know that I'm oversimplifying it, but like that's all it would have taken.
Yeah, but a serious response at the beginning that was actually adhered to could have had a way huge impact.
Of course, and tens and tens of thousands of lives. I mean, you talk about watching Fox News. I can't do it, right? Because like it's so stressful to watch what's going on there. It didn't make me feel in control. It made me realize how out of control everybody is, And it's scary stuff on there, man. Watching that dude who's the president.
That dude. Alex, you had your vaccination some time ago.
Yeah, I had my vaccination on Tuesday. In film, I get tested 3 times a week. So today I just got paid to drive into Langley, which is about an hour from my house, just to get a COVID test and then drive back. And that's because if I have more than, I think it's like 72 hours without work, so because it's the weekend and it's the long weekend, I had to get tested today.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So I can work on Monday, and then Monday I'll get tested again. I got the shot because I work for hospice as well as I work for community, like I work in group homes with at-risk youth. So I'm in and out of many different doors and wearing different hats. And it's very hard to do my job safely during COVID. And also it's really hard to fully engage now. Like, as much as I want to listen to and help and be supportive, in the back of my mind, all I'm thinking is, but how close are you to me right now? But where have you been? Like, how much sanitizer do you have? And I have, like, right now, I just want to wash myself. And it's sad to think that, and that's not how I should be thinking. But when I realize that it's not affecting me, it's affecting I could bring it home to my entire family, and I can bring it home to another family, and that can affect multiple different people. It's, it really takes the responsibility level to, like, the ultimate.
Yeah.
So
that was just this past Tuesday that you got.
Yeah. So now I feel a bit better. I mean,
our community is one of the ones that's being, as an isolated community, inoculated kind of as a group in a quick period instead of the age trickle down. What did it feel like to make that phone call and book your appointment?
Oh, Chelsea did it for me.
Well, so that probably felt even better.
If that was great. I just had the appointment. I didn't even know they had announced that you had to call in, and I already had an appointment. So I was like, woohoo. When they announced that they were going to do the remote communities first, I was definitely took a deep breath. My mom got vaccinated on, like, the day before they made that announcement. And then, so it felt good, excited, happy.
Is your day-to-day pressures? I know there's that psychology that you want to avoid loosening up, because obviously that's not the best way to respond.
I mean, I've gone through so many phases of pandemics, and I don't know, there's, how many new normals ago I stopped really panicking. Yeah. So I work in hospitality. I'm at the front desk at that hotel, right? I'm dealing with people coming into town. I'm dealing with all those essential travelers as they flood into Tofino for the long weekend. And they've really set us up for success in terms of being safe. I do feel really safe at work, and, like, all the high touch places are, like, sanitized every hour, and they really the effort is being made. I'm very happy to know that the end of this is coming soon, and that I will be safe myself, So yeah, a lot of peace of mind in that.
Erin, how about yourself?
So my sweater has a window of opportunity in it. I hope it's placed perfectly for my shot on April 15th. I don't think that...
I see. I didn't get that part. That makes sense.
What did I miss? I don't get it.
I had one sleeve left to finish this week, and it was just one of those things that popped into my head one day. I was out doing whatever, and I was like, oh, I know, I'm going to put a big hole in the arm so that I can wear my sweater when I get my vaccination.
That's awesome.
Oh, I love it.
And so, yeah, it's really hard to write on your arm. Mm-hmm. So I wrote window of opportunity.
I'm looking at it right now. I'm sorry.
I saw the window of opportunity, and I interpret it like we talked about earlier, the time that's been created, this big vacuum of time. Didn't see the inoculation going through it.
I said this to Kim Hogue. I said, I want to keep the piece sort of under wraps and then get some video footage of me going off to my appointment on April 15th with my mask on.
Yeah.
I think it's placed. It's okay. Anyway.
You mentioned lots of important social issues that have come about, or maybe not come about, but been discussed in this last little while. And maybe there's even been some whataboutisms. COVID might kill this many people, but the economic fallout of closing the economy will lead to more mental health and addictions and overdoses and suicides and stuff like that. This is the only thing that I've experienced that I feel happened, at least in some way, to everybody on the planet in my lifetime. Even September 11th, major global thing, I actually can't really say in a meaningful way how that impacted me directly as an individual. But everybody's going to have a story about how this affected them. Is this making us more human because we can recognize other humans dealing with it? Or are we just is this going to be more us and them, like me and Tara and our cannibal cult?
We're all going through it together. I know. And at first that sounded so cliche, and I understood what that saying means, but it doesn't negate your situation, your personal struggles that you had to go through with COVID. I don't want to say when misery loves company, but it makes it easier to know that you're not by yourself. And it makes it easier to cope when you know that there's someone going through something so much more severe or harder, something that you couldn't imagine. And it really brings out the empathy. The way I've taken kind of control of this situation in the COVID, I've just done something every day to make someone else's life just that much better. And it could be something really small. I bought someone something at McDonald's today because I live in a town where there's a McDonald's. Sorry. It turns our humanity switch back on for the people who want it back on.
I'm a little more cynical on the human nature in regards to how this will affect us. When you face death, it kind of realigns your adjustment to who matters and why they matter, and you appreciate those friendships more, right? I'm thinking of a world in 10 years from now, and maybe I have too much city still in me, but I spent the first 40 years of my life living in a major metropolitan city. The last 5 years of my life, I've been living in a place where I understand for the first time in my life what it means to be in a community and means to be connected to other humans and to have those real relationships. I miss the pre-internet world where we connected with people, and I don't think we're going to turn back around. I don't think a pandemic can stop us on this horrible path that we're going down with on everybody living online and social media. Maybe it's going to amplify it. I'm hopeful. I love your perspective. I wish that I felt the same way that you do. I'm very cynical about humanity at this point, and more cynical now than maybe I was at the beginning of the pandemic, because I've seen the worst in a lot of people too.
For the first 40 years you lived in a big metropolitan area. Do you imagine that this has been a lot harder for people in those places than it has been for us out here on the end of the road?
I can't even imagine what it would be like there. I can't even imagine. I can't. I'm blessed. I'm so lucky to have been in a small coastal community for all of this, right? I mean, we're getting vaccinated soon because we're at bigger risk. Like, we've got one ventilator for I think Tofino and Ucluelet share it. So
yeah,
I
that's
mean,
the one at the hospital. It's not even us to house it. No pizza.
exactly. That's 8 communities, and we have to 2 people have to go on a ventilator. Then we have to choose who lives and who dies, right? So, but so that sucks. But being in a community where we respect each other and we know each other, and we maybe know each other too well in some cases, can't imagine what it would be like to be living in Montreal right now. My heart goes out to them.
When you're in a crowd, but you don't know anybody in the crowd, it's so much more isolating than when you're, walking the beach by yourself because the tourists aren't allowed to come. In the work that I do, you'd think I'd be kind of like super cynical about it, but I don't have that cynical view of people. I do get waves of anger and disappointment in some people's behavior, but if I take a step back and think about it, I really think that some of those people who are acting in ways that are socially irresponsible, they're just showing us that they're so disconnected.
Lonely. They're so lonely.
Yeah, isolated.
They don't care. They don't care about anybody because they don't feel connected to anybody. And I say anybody just is a kind of a metaphor, but if we're thinking about younger people who are like away from home and don't have really close, like intimate relationships, haven't started building their own families yet, they need support and they need to be pulled in. And it sounds so corny, but they just need to be pulled in and loved. And if they feel loved, then they will have that. But at the same time, I get mad too. Be like, dude, like, put your mask over your nose, or like, don't breathe on my head. When I think about these people, I think of them as like the prodigal children that need to be welcomed back and forgiven for what they've done and just taught the right way with love and compassion. We don't all have that in us. I don't have it in me. But, as a community, we can't say that person's good and socially responsible and that person's bad. I can say that person's doing well and well supported, understands the reasons behind social responsibility, and has the resources to summon up that strength to make personal sacrifices. And that person who is flouting the rules and denying that this is an issue, that there are risks, and even like the people that say, oh, the government just made this up, that boggles the mind.
Mm-hmm.
But those are people, those are not bad people. Those are people who are suffering.
But one of the things me and Tara talk about is being here and hating on the tourists that are coming out.
So I can't come.
Yeah, stay back, stay and chill out. We would probably want to come here if we weren't already here too. The only reason we didn't have that wanderlust was that we were already at the place that has that comfort and is that thing. And yeah, like you said, they're not bad people. It's just, I guess, me recognizing my privilege of having that thing that's the desirable option right now.
I have my family here, but I have my roots and my connections just like a stone throw away, and they're spread out across the island. And I've been back once because when it lightened up a little bit in the summertime, where I was able to do minimal amount of traveling, and to the point where it had to get to, okay, I have to cut out half of the people I want to see, and I have to travel alone to accommodate and to make it work because of COVID. And I had to prioritize who I visited, even though I wasn't having direct contact with it, like physically touching them, but just because their fear, big bad, mainlander coming to the island, it came with little nicknames and it came with a little bit of hate and judgment. You're in the Fraser Valley. Do you know how bad it is? I'm like, I understand, but I just spent 2 weeks in isolation just to spend time with you for 5 minutes. So please. And for me, that's my biggest thing is my family, the people I've grown up with, the people who've known me, my best friends, my humans, they all live on the island. That has been a huge challenge. And I'm not a person to do this. I can't Skype or Zoom, and I wouldn't be drawn to this. I need the physical connection of being in a room with someone. And that, I think, has been the biggest challenge for me this whole thing, is not being able to go and visit my family and my friends.
I think one of the interesting phenomenons, and I totally understand the desire to come to Tofino. It's restorative just to walk on the beach, and during a time like this, everybody needs something like that. I'm not really judging the people that come here, but I have noticed that it is a very different type of tourist that we experienced last year. It was people who maybe we weren't their first choice in destination. And we were kind of the prize B, and they almost were resentful that they had to be here. And they acted out, and they acted in ways, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And it was probably just the dirty 1 in 10 that ruined it for everybody. But that was the perception, that these people just didn't care about coming here. And I'd never seen so much trash on the beach. I'd never seen so many fires and so much irresponsible people running around. And maybe it is a current trend, and maybe it's just the growing population. But I think that because this wasn't necessarily their first choice in a vacation, they acted accordingly. So that was more my objection. Not that
my trip to Cancun got canceled, so I'm kind of bitter about my trip.
Going to Tofino.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think there's going to be massive, people who change careers. Wow, I haven't been to the office for 4 months. I just realized I never want to be in an office again. I'm going to become a landscaper now. There's going to be people that have had huge realizations about themselves.
Before COVID, I remember my grandma asked us all a question at dinner. And she said, what would you do with 2 extra hours a day? COVID has taught me what I would do with my 2 extra hours a day. And I think what I've learned is that I will never go back to working to the extreme lengths I used to work, where I would be a yes man and just work and work and work. And it's okay to say no, and it's okay to step back, and I don't need to have all the vacations and all the nice things. I can just enjoy my time, and that's worth more than anything. I'll never go back to a 60-hour work week again.
Me either, but that wasn't really ever a risk for me.
I will say this, on those early days, you make the apocalypse jokes, but I think having watched too many of those apocalypse movies, having that played a huge part in how I thought things might turn out,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was weird.
That's why all the toilet paper was gone.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh.
Exactly.
I did some light duty prepping. Like I went and bought flats of cans of vegetable soup before we even knew we were going to get any of the curb money or anything. I was like, okay, we have money in the bank. We don't really know what's going to go down. Gas prices are really low. Let's fill up our furnace tank so that in October, when it starts getting cold and we're properly broke because the apocalypse has come, we can heat the house for the winter, and it's going to be cheaper to fill it up now. Or maybe the infrastructure
Doesn't even exist.
might not even, like, it could be that bad, right? I had those thoughts and I made some of those decisions. I didn't like full on start stockpiling ammunition or anything, but yeah, I had moments of thinking about that sort of thing. My dad owns guns, and there was a bit.
You should learn to shoot them.
There was that thing. It's like, hey, maybe for the next one.
There are a lot of deer in Euclid, and venison is delicious. I'm just saying.
But you could, with the deer in Yuki, you could just walk out in the street with an apple, and they would follow you to your shed.
I
You
know.
follow them with a hammer.
That's easy pickings, man.
Yeah.
You wouldn't need the gun. You're right. Good point.
Yeah. Or some guy with a gun down the street would have them all bagged in a day, and you wouldn't even have a chance. So your video has been floating around for a while. The Isolation Nation. Is there specific subjects that you addressed in that we haven't covered already?
Oh my God, all of them. I mean, all of the issues. I think isolation was kind of the theme that I went off of and just had fun with that more than anything else. I really felt like I hit on. I mean, all of the kind of things that were going on, all the things that were going through, everything was actually kind of in your face. All the things, I literally had a list of the things you can't do and cross them off on the screen, you know? It's going to be so weird, you know, in 10 years from now to look back and watch it. And I think there will be little parts of it that will spark my memory of what it was like to go through the pandemic myself, you know, because, you know, those were all my kind of experience, you know, watching the news, watching the chart, you know, like, you know, just, you know, not being able to see your friends, just like all of those things, just all this information, all the television stations just coming at you, you know, like those were my experiences. So I think that it'll resonate with me. It'll be interesting to see how I feel about it in a decade. We'll see.
If we're not in the middle of another pandemic by then. This is my first pandemic. We better not be shooting them myself.
Right.
Yes,
Oh, no.
that was the prompt saying my first pandemic. I was like, I don't know if I like that.
You did address quite a few quick little things, some of them localized to Tofino in your bit. And some of them, the grander kind of social media, the anti-vaxxers and all the fake news and stuff like that. And I don't think we need to get too deep into that because it's out there already being torn apart by so many people in so many different ways. And I think it's been the second disaster. You know, there was the earthquake followed by the tsunami. The earthquake was the pandemic itself, and the tsunami is this whole social breakdown that kind of has come from it so quickly that almost has to be a whole other thing because I don't really want to deal with it. But Aaron, how about your piece? Was there any other insights from it that we haven't touched on that we should make sure to look at, or should we just wait until after your vaccination and then it'll kind of come into its light?
It was just a really personal experience, and the posting the photos, some of the reactions were difficult to take. I don't have a thick skin and I don't intend to toughen up. It was cool to elicit a response, different responses from people. It was a way of connecting through something that was just so personal, like Miles's response and reactions to the masking. It was really, that's been my favorite part, even like some of the crappy things people said to me.
Well, one of my observations when I saw it was that the part of you that was capable of displaying emotion was gone, was covered, you know, and we're experiencing that with a mask, but we're also just, I think a lot of us have had our ability to have emotional ups and downs as trauma does, just kind of blanked out into this flat gray. So taking away someone's face, someone's ability to smile or cry or whatever, I kind of caught that. And then when it was in business and, you know, exposed midriff in the photo, there was also just that vulnerability that was implied by that I caught, feeling like your identity and your emotions have been removed, but yet at the same time, your identity and your emotions were in a different way were exposed.
It's a commentary on the human body. The human body is not shouldn't be a pathologized thing. And I got in trouble for not wearing enough clothes, whatever. But I also find that I gravitate to pieces of art where I don't see the person's face, because I can project my own and connect my own emotions and experiences to it more easily, because I can put myself in the place of the subject. The body being visible is like, I'm human, I'm vulnerable. My body, I have a body, you have a body. It's a human thing without an individual me thing.
I liked how strong your eyes are in it, opposed to, it's not a seductive thing by covering your face and just showing your eyes. It was more of there was, almost like a shell shock with strength, like a turtle coming out of its shell, but also still so strong. Like, okay. I'm here. And this is what we're doing now. This is where we're at. So that's what I got out of it.
Me being a bit defensive, or like my resting bitch face, but I really I appreciate your take on it too. Like, that's why I do what I do, is I really like hearing people's emotional experiences and responses to things. This was another way of asking people, what are you feeling under your mask?
Well, I think that is enough stuff for me to chop up into a nice little chat with us all looking smarter than we are. Does anybody have any thoughts or parting wisdom, or anything else they wish to share?
Should we all say a cheesy tagline from the COVID?
Is there not going to be a sing-along? There's not going to be. I thought this was a sing-along. I'm very disappointed right now.
Could you bounce a ball on the word?
Yeah, do the little isolation nation.
My first pandemic.